Alright, so I got another joke for you. So, a man walks into a bar. It's a gay bar. Get it? A gay bar? Wasn't really that funny. I mean, it's also kind of offensive. Mostly to comedy, but also a little bit to homosexual people as well. No, God, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make it a whole thing. I shouldn't let it distract from my set. I apologize, and I'm just gonna let... You're apologizing? I thought you were a funny man. Oh, funny man's gonna cave for the SJW censorship. Ugh. God, this thing is so stupid. You're stupid. Your jokes are stupid. You know what? You're right. I shouldn't let myself succumb to censorship. You know what? I'm gonna tell that joke again. So, a man walks into a gay bar. Yeah, that's about the level of discourse that we're dealing with right now. I was planning on having this week's video be a Patreon-sponsored fun video ranking the Mirror Universe episodes of Star Trek. But something happened this week in the gaming community that kind of involved transphobia and homophobia, and I just wanted to take this episode to talk about it. Because, you know, with all the issues trans people face today, I think my talents are best focused on minor events in the gaming community. I use my time wisely. Okay, so getting into it, a new retro indie shooter game from developer Voidpoint called Ion Fury came out earlier this month. So if you're not a gamer, and even if you are, you may have only heard about this game back when it was originally called Ion Maiden, and then Iron Maiden sued them for copyright infringement. Because apparently Iron Maiden has no love of puns. Which honestly is sad. I really feel true sadness that they won't ever know the joy of a good, beautiful pun. But regardless, the developer changed the name of the game to Ion Fury, and the game came out and it got pretty good reviews. All in all, a decent win for a small publisher, and I was actually looking forward to playing this game. It reminded me of like old 90s shooter games like Doom or Chex Quest. Yeah, anyone else remember Chex Quest? The Chex cereal Doom knockoff? It was actually the only shooter I was allowed to play at my grandma's house, so I have like weird fond memories of it. You play as Chex guy? I don't even... Whatever, that's a whole different thing. But all in all, with the reviews of the game, it was a decent win for a small publisher. Then things got unfortunate. On a Discord chat talking with gamers, two developers of Ion Fury posted these comments. Most SJWs are just angry people of any gender, sex, race, nationality, and age because complaining on the internet feels good, man. There is no feminist slant in this game. So, at the risk of being one of those complaining SJWs, actually no, this isn't that bad. It's a bit unfortunate, but okay, whatever, it's not a big... Yeah, if you're trying to decide your child is trans at birth, you have mental problems and probably shouldn't be a parent. Well, I'd say it's similar to autism, where the brain develops abnormally. Well, they have abnormally developed brains if they can be that dumb. Alright, well... that's a thing. Not entirely sure how a sci-fi shooter game devolved into transphobia, but alright, that's a little bit worse. Arguing that trans people are mentally ill, or that being trans leads to suicides, is a fairly debunked stuff at this point. One of the developers even imply that, quote, mutilating a perfectly healthy body while you have depression and other big issues could lead to suicide. Basically implying that being trans means you're going to kill yourself, and that being trans is a mental health issue rather than just a state of being. Now again, trans people can face mental health issues and also stigma for being trans that does lead to suicide and a higher suicide rate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that being trans is a mental health issue. And again, it's a clearly transphobic argument and leans into offensive rhetoric that does lead to trans people becoming suicidal because of the stigma. But if you want more info on me talking about that, check out this video, or this video, I'm unsure which side it's going to be on, where I talk about that. And it'll go into more detail about why this is a problem. But honestly, even though this is transphobic, I am not the most offended by it. It honestly comes across as mostly ignorant. But obviously there were a lot of people calling out against the developer for this, and rightfully so. And this whole event got even worse when it was revealed that inside the game itself, you can find a secret area with the word fag bag in it, as well as soap bottles parodying Olay shampoo called Oh Gay. Oh, okay, and not every pun is created equal, okay? I love puns, no. So I'm gonna be honest here, even as a trans person, I see all of this as kind of small potatoes. Sure, the transphobic developer stuff is upsetting, but again, it mostly just comes across as someone who doesn't really know what they're talking about. And again, the SJW stuff is disappointing and is indicative of these guys political leanings, but again, whatever. I've seen worse, I've heard worse, and the ogay and fagbag stuff are just like terrible jokes that weren't even funny in the 90s era that the game is sending up, except to the middle schoolers who were telling those types of jokes. Now, I don't begrudge anyone for being upset about these specific issues, and this stuff honestly made me less enthusiastic about the game and probably meant that I wasn't going to be buying it. But being honest, this is all on the low end of homophobic and transphobic stuff that I've had to deal with. And again, I don't mean to over minimize it because these views can lead to harm to the trans and gay community, but there's only so much we all can rail against, and there were already so many advocates already doing that, talking about this game, so I didn't feel like I needed to add my voice into this. I sadly wasn't going to buy the game that I was mildly looking forward to, but whatever. And then things got weird. When a bunch of people rightfully called all this out and it got some press attention, Voidpoint's first impulse was to deny and minimize. You should probably do your own research before coming to that conclusion. The crop tool in Photoshop has always been just as much about what you are removing as what you are keeping. Which, again, we have full context of the Discord conversation, which shows exactly what I was talking about. A developer stating that being transgender is equated to being mentally ill, and that transgender people's suicidality rate is proof of that. Again, a position that is transphobic and mostly ignorant on the whole issue. Eventually though, once the fagbag and ogay stuff came out, Voidpoint changed their tune. They sent a statement to Eurogamer saying, "Members of Voidpoint's Ion Fury team have made sexist and transphobic comments, and included homophobic language in Ion Fury. We recognize these statements are insensitive, unacceptable, and counterproductive to causes of equality. We unequivocally apologize both for these comments and language as well as for any pain that may have caused the gaming community, particularly women and members of the LGBTQ community. We take full responsibility for any damage that was done to the relationships we've worked so hard to build. Moving forward, Voidpoint will institute a zero-tolerance policy for this type of language, and all employees and contractors will undergo mandatory sensitivity training. As part of our efforts to contribute to the work that must be done to further support these communities, we are donating $10,000 from Ion Fury's release date proceeds to the Trevor Project. We are also patching Ion Fury ASAP to remove all unacceptable language." Okay, so Voidpoint finally acknowledges that the team made sexist and transphobic comments. They also acknowledge that there is a homophobic language in the game. They take responsibility for the statements and say that they're going to first institute mandatory sensitivity training. Which is great. Though, by the way, as a side note, I always wonder what companies mean when they talk about mandatory sensitivity training. Like, is it like one of those boring fire safety training videos that I have to watch at my company? The ones where they make you take that annoyingly dumb quiz at the end with questions like, in a fire, do you A, cry, B, run screaming into the fire, C, yell, "Hail Satan!"
Hail Satan!
Or D, leave the building. Cause like, I never pay attention to any of those, ever. I'm gonna die if there's a fire at work, aren't I? Anyways, they also say they're going to donate $10,000 to the Trevor Project and an LGBTQ charity, which is awesome. And they also say that, most importantly, they are going to patch out all the unacceptable language from the game. Sorry, okay bottles, I will not be using you to get clean. Or oh so dirty. So, hooray! They apologized, and sure, the developers who said the offensive remarks don't get punished all that much, but honestly, going through a really boring seminar is almost punishment enough, and in the end, really, a charity gets some money. Honestly, that's all I needed. I'm good now. I still have a little bit of a bitter taste, but at this point, I may actually pick up the game. That is, until. If I could refund this game at this point, I would. I would, because despite being a wonderful game and something I've dreamed since FPS's all turned into generic Call of Duties, I won't ever support a company that caves into the cries of the oh-so-oppressed boo-hoo snowflakes. Yet another great game marred by SJW lunacy. What a damn shame. I'd love to praise the game's frantic gameplay, the inspired level design, and beautiful art direction, but instead I can only really show my utter disapproval at how the devs and publishers handled the recent outrage. Hate speech? Really? Having some timid references to homosexuality is really that big of a deal? I guess we really do live in a clown world after all. I would refund if I could. So they decided to censor the game? Pathetic. Censorship is not to be tolerated. Why did I give it a negative review then, do you ask? Because I'm a man of principle, and any corporation that bends the knee to commie pigs while spitting in the face of the normal fans deserves whatever negativity it gets. Never apologize, never back down. No, Aquaman, not you. Not you too. Man, Aquaman got really political. Yep, the game got review bombed on Steam, taking the game's average review of positive to mixed. And here's where I actually got so annoyed that I decided to make this video. Voidpoint and publisher 3D Realms backpedaled their entire earlier statement, saying, We do not support censorship of creative works of any kind, and regret our initial decision to alter a sprite in the game instead of trusting our instincts. 3D Realms and Voidpoint stand together on this matter. They later reiterated, quote, "The soap bottle will not be removed." The use of the word fag bag in an area that was inaccessible without hacking the game and was added by one developer without approval from anyone else was removed a few days ago. We once again apologize for this text as it does not reflect the values of 3D Realms or Voidpoint. Jokes at the expense of marginalized communities will not be present in future games published by 3D Realms. However, a portion of our community made it loud and clear that they felt removing OGay was censorship and should be protected by free speech. Voidpoint wanted to listen, and we respected this decision. So there's 2 points here that really bothered me and led me to make this video. 1. Backpedaling on their plans to remove the homophobic language, it makes their entire initial apology seem disingenuous. That they were only doing it because they were pressured to, instead of actually believing that this stuff isn't okay. But the real thing that gets me is this complaint that by removing homophobic language, they were succumbing to censorship and a denial of free speech. Which really just goes to show you how little people understand what censorship actually is. Censorship is the suppression of speech considered objectionable or inconvenient by a government, private institution, or corporation. Now, censorship is not inherently positive or negative. We censor child porn, for example, which I think we can all agree is a good thing. It can obviously be negative, like when a government censors free speech, like China, to use an extreme example. But again, censorship is neither good or bad in and of itself. However, what censorship does mean is that an entity more powerful than the creators themselves is the one that implements the censorship. An outside entity with more power over you comes in and censors you. It can be a government, or a corporation that owns you, or anything else. But Voidpoint, the creators of the game, deciding to remove the homophobic content themselves, their own decision, is not censorship. Now I know some of you out there will say, but there were those dang SJWs calling for them to remove the content. Yes, sure, but they did not have power over Voidpoint. They couldn't force them to take it out, as evidenced by the fact that they kept it in at all. Voidpoint had no obligation to act. They have control of what they keep in or not. Good or bad, censorship is forced. And Voidpoint was not forced. Pressured, but not forced. And again, certainly self-censorship, where you change your work based on perceived pressures, is a thing. And that can be a complicated thing to dissect, but first off, all artists self-censor. Every single one, at all times. You can't just crap out everything you think on the page. Unless you're Jack Kerouac. Self-censorship is part of the process. There are things that I didn't put in this video or in other videos they make because I know how they would be perceived. And so I self-censor them or change what I was going to say in order to accommodate that. That's just part of putting art out into the world that you mean to be consumed. And I know I just equated my videos with true art because I am an artist.
The burden of the artist is to capture.
And if you are a creative company that truly believes that something in your work is, quote, insensitive, unacceptable, and counterproductive to causes of equality, and that it caused, quote, pain to the gaming community, particularly women and members of the LGBTQ community, then why wouldn't you want this to be something that you self-censored? Like I said, the "oh gay" bottle is dumb and stupid. The joke is, oh, haha, the word gay is funny. Sure, it's offensive, but really, who cares? But now, if I play the game and see that bottle, I now see what it's come to represent. You know, beyond the fact that some people don't understand the power of a well-crafted pun. It represents either a company who didn't care enough about the messages it was trying to send out with its art to remove a silly joke from a bottle. Or it represents a company that didn't give a crap about the LGBTQ community at all in the first place, and only pretended to so I'd buy their game. And that is way more damaging to me as a trans person than a mildly eye-rolling and unfunny, nominally offensive pun. And what do you gain by keeping this message in your game? Well, at its most minimal, you're saying that my sense of well-being as an LGBTQ person is less important to you than someone getting a mild chuckle at a stupid gay joke. And at its worst, you're sending a signal to transphobes and homophobes out there that they're right and that they win as long as they whine about how they're oppressed. It's the same thing that happens when an alt-writer gets kicked out of speaking at a college. They yell and scream about censorship, saying that they have a right to free speech. Yes, you have a right to free speech, but you do not have a right to a platform. You can say whatever you want in America, but we don't have to prop you up and listen. Because the things you say cause real, actual harm to living humans. Maybe not directly, but it creates an air that leads to real harm. But no, you'd rather say that just because no one wants to hear your message, that you're the real oppressed, the real hurt, even when your loss isn't even half of what it would cost a marginalized community. And I know that all of this is larger than this Void Point game, and honestly, it's kind of a minimal thing. But it really just bothered me how this whole thing played out. That, something so silly and inconsequential as developers talking in a Discord chat and some really stupid gay jokes ended up being this whole thing that became emblematic of a much larger issue in this country. About this discussion that people feel like they're being oppressed when they have to accommodate even just a little bit someone else's feelings and thoughts. And I'm not saying that you can't make any jokes about trans people or gay people. I make jokes about trans people all the time. It's half of what I do on this channel. But to do it at the expense of someone else, and then whine when that person feels offended, and saying you're the one that's really hurt by this, is just honestly upsetting and completely misunderstanding the point and lacking empathy. And it's just frustrating that it came out in this really silly, dumb way and became this huge deal that it didn't need to be. Alas, that's all I really have to say on this. I just felt the need to talk about it. But before I go, you know what my favorite thing about this whole event is? By backpedaling, this led to even more people review bombing the game. After doing the right thing and apologizing, giving away money to a good charity, these idiots decide to reverse their decision after alt-right crybaby bullying. I will not support transphobia and homophobia in any way. And for the first time in my life, I have requested a refund for the game. So, in the end, Void Point really pleased nobody. And I still don't have a game to play. Ah well, at least Borderlands 3 is coming out in a few weeks. Ah, god damn it. Hey interwebs, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked this and want even more analysis of geek topics on everything from Star Trek to DC Comics, or you want social and political analysis and discussions, or social and political discussions through geek topics, give my channel a subscribe. And if you want to actively help make my videos even better, consider giving to my Patreon page. Each and every bit helps make these videos truly awesome, and there are some cool perks and benefits of being a Patreon, like having your name listed below just like these wonderful, amazing people. And finally, I want to give a shout out to Patreon Stefan Schuchart, who is kind enough to be a Patreon at the Admiral level. Thank you so much, Stefan. Your support and the support of my other patrons truly means the world to me, and it's what keeps me motivated as a creator. But regardless of if you subscribe or give to my Patreon, I hope that all of you live long and prosper.